All right, I'd like to call the Cottage Grove event January 3rd. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, meaning that we are in the Village Hall as well as on Zoom. I'm getting somewhere. All right. All right. There's an audio call-in number on the top of the agenda as well for those that choose to just do audio, and the meeting ID is there. We have a quorum. The agenda is properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4 is public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak. If you are from the public and wish to speak, we just ask that you share your name, your municipality, and your address, as well as hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes, just in case we have a number of folks who would like to speak. With that, I'll pause to see if anybody on the Zoom would like to speak from the public. All right, next then we have discuss and consider our meeting minutes from our regular board meeting held on December 19th. Any questions, comments, edits regarding the meeting minutes as presented?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, then we move right into reports from village boards, commissions, and committees, starting off with tourism, and I'll take a stab at this and see where we go from that. So the Tourism Commission met on Wednesday, December 21st. The big item there for this particular meeting was twofold. One, to name a chairperson, which is now Brittany. And the other one was to discuss the draft contract to engage the Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce to be the designated tourism industry, which the commission approved. I don't know, Rick, if you want to say any more about that.
Yeah.
Yourself, since you drafted it for us.
Yeah, so the reason the contract's now coming before the board, I think I may have mentioned this before, is basically state law says that the Tourism Commission itself contracts with a tourism entity to spend your room tax dollars. So by law, we have to send 70% of room tax that the village generates to an entity that does tourism promotion and development. So that 70% basically is funneled through the Tourism Commission to the Chamber of Commerce, because the Chamber is the only entity in town that can do it, basically. So this is essentially just a one-year agreement with them where they're going to be providing tourism promotion and development services using any room tax that the village generates. So most of it's going to come from Comfort Suites, but there could also be some Airbnb room tax revenue that comes in, those types of things. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward.
And the board needs to approve that because it's not on the agenda stated such.
No, the board doesn't need to approve.
Because it's a commission,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Any questions, comments from board members regarding? Yes.
Do they spend that however they feel like it then? Do they have to tell us how they spend it, or?
Yeah, they'll be providing, I believe it's quarterly updates about how it's being spent. But by law, they have to spend it on tourism promotion and development services, so they have to prove to us that they're doing that.
And so the contract is for 1 year, so then each year, do we need to kind of renegotiate or find some?
Yeah, basically the thinking was, this is our first time doing it, so we want to just see how things go, and we can evaluate things after a year.
Thanks.
And the chamber was in the same boat. They wanted to make sure that they're able to provide the service that they believe they can as well.
Yep.
I just had a quick question.
Oh, there's Heidi.
Hi. Do they have to spend a certain percentage of the money each year, or is there
So
can
all,
we like bank it?
yeah, basically they can't bank any of it. Like the money has to be spent on tourism promotion and development. It's a flexible standard. But it can't just go to their general fund to be spent on general chamber type issues. It needs to be spent on more promotional type things. So oftentimes you'll see in other communities, they'll do like ad campaigns, whether it's posting articles in other newspapers across the state or making videos, depending on how much of a budget they actually get or how much room tax revenue they have. But basically, they can't just bank it from year to year. And that's what the updates are for, where they have to show us what they're spending, the money on, how much they spent, and that way we can keep track throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any key results that they will be delivering?
So there aren't like any objective metrics, I guess, on, this is more of a trial period, I guess. As things develop, we can try to build in some, reporting metrics, I guess, how many clicks that they generate from ad buys and things like that. It may be hard to, without doing surveys, to see, what material actually brings people, but those are definitely things we can consider moving forward.
The other true test will be is, at least the one existing hotel, is do they continue to increase their room, occupancy? I mean, that's the true test of whether or not the marketing's doing. One of the first things they're looking at doing is just overall marketing strategy. So out of that, then you start building out metrics, and then out of that also build a funnel of opportunities. All this money has to be spent outside the village, gather or bring people to the village. So it's not to market to our residents, it's to market to those outside Cottage Grove. And their state law is very specific on how that's supposed to be spent and what it's supposed to be spent.
Speaking of that, John, there was in the agenda, there was an update from Comfort Suites. Did they give an update at that meeting?
No, they were not in attendance. They just changed managers again.
Oh, okay.
So we did not get an update.
Did
So
you
that'll
get-
be the next one.
Did you get an update on the tourism fund balance?
Yes.
So I actually have that number up in front of me. So through the first 3 quarters this year, we're looking at $60,442.51. That would be, a check would be issued to the tourism or to the Chamber of Commerce.
And that's over, you said a quarter or a fiscal year?
That's 3 quarters.
3
So from the first quarter,
Is it opened
second,
in-
third. They're required to submit within 30 days of the end of the quarter. So by January 30th, I'll have Comfort Suites room tax dollars as well as anybody else that owes us room tax. And then my thought process here would be we would ask for metrics or some type of what are you doing with the funds before we would issue the next check. So we issue this check, we get a response, and then we send the next check, and kind of that's the flow.
I think a lot of this is, we don't know what we don't know yet, because it's the village's first hotel, and just, it's the first, first dance for everybody, so I think it's just like, we're just kind of seeing how this goes. I remember talking to Melissa about some of this, and it was just like, where do the funds go, and now it goes to the chamber, and you have to give them 60%, and how are they gonna use it? Well, now we know that they have to report to us, so I think it's just gonna throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks, I guess.
Yeah, basically state law says they have to spend it on marketing activities that are reasonably likely to generate hotel stays. So it's very broad on what that could be.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see, like, has the commission talked about any marketing tactics at all, or?
The commission has talked about some of them. Most of the conversation was just understanding the law itself, getting to this point, understanding that
Yeah.
we needed another entity to actually do this for us as a commission, even as the village board. So that's kind of where we're at. This is definitely going to be a collaboration. It's the first time for the commission, for the chamber. They've already engaged other experts, other chambers that are doing this. So they're going in, kind of eyes wide
Sure.
open as well. to ensure that they're providing, you know, the best service they can. Because ultimately, it's good for their membership.
Yeah.
Because if they come to the hotel, they may visit the restaurant, they may go to
Mhm.
the pharmacy or wherever. You know, it's in their best interest to do this well.
In terms of how the money is spent lawfully, are they able to, as an example, let's say the rugby folks over there have a 3-day event, and we want to promote that for them. Can we use money to help provide infrastructure for them if they need restrooms at their, you know, extra toilets or what, you know, various things to support some local entity in bringing people in from out of town?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think there's a clear answer on something like that. You know, my inclination would be yes, because it's helping drive more people there. You're able to handle more. You clearly can't spend it on roads, like, but making it easier for people to come and stay, you know, that's probably fair game. Ultimately, it's just, is this reasonably going to be likely to generate somebody staying at the hotel? And since it's so broad, we can probably fit a lot under that umbrella.
The best use is probably marketing that event. And if the tourism entity is doing that, then there should be more funds for rugby to do the infrastructure things they
Fair.
need to do.
Yeah, but just working with local organizations, they can reach out to the rugby club and say, hey, are you having any?
And they already have.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments regarding this? All right, thanks, Rick. Next, then we have the library board. David?
Yep, we met Wednesday, December 21st, here in the Village Hall. Out of our new business, Eric gave us a final report from the library visits and the data collection, and came up with a lot of really good, interesting kind of takeaways from the library visits. I think we had some really good conversation around what other libraries in Dane County value and things that we thought there was a lot of hypotheses we kind of tested from there. I then gave kind of a synopsis of where we're at with FGM, and kind of gave a direction to staff around where to go from there. Ultimately, we're just looking for kind of when does the master planning start for the library side of things? So JJ's going to kind of chase that down. Tracy gave kind of a post-survey results from the 2022 programming that the Friends did. Lots of really good information there and lots of really good feedback that will help kind of influence the Friends' 2023 programming. We did discuss creation of a public FAQ, so JJ is going to put together kind of a draft for our next meeting. So that's really kind of a huge highlight for us from a library board perspective, is coming away with answers to commonly asked questions around a potential library. We then discussed and considered the 2023 goals, of which we approved them. We did appoint myself, Stefan, and Cindy to the policy committee. And again, JJ is going to start putting together some programming policy for our next meeting. On the topic of programming, then, we did direct Sean to hire a library programming and outreach specialist contractor to organize and facilitate library programming during our initial period of 6 months, with the option to extend through the end of 2023 pending funding. Right now, as you know, we gave roughly about 15 grand for in the budget for funding. So it became very, very apparent to us that rather than trying to partner with outside libraries, we needed to hire a contractor for this. I guess the point I want to make is that the money doesn't stretch very far when you go talk to McFarland or Madison. We actually talked to Monona, and Monona was like, "We are totally with you, but we can't help you in any way. We're here in solidarity, but we don't really have the capability to help you in any way." The other thing that we really learned too was summer reading program is huge for libraries. Again, that sounds like that makes total sense, David. Why wouldn't you know that? But in terms of other libraries helping us, they can help us basically from now until April, and then from April to September is when the summer reading challenge takes place. And that's when all libraries kind of, it's all hands on deck and everybody's kind of engaged in that. So we are going to partner with McFarland to do story time, but they can do it from now until April, and then they're off until September. So you really don't, we're thankful for the help, but again, it became very apparent to us we need more of a contractor to help us out there. So we're kind of going down that path. We then talked about 2023 grant opportunities to try to help add some additional funds. We did approve ALA membership, which just came through the other day. And the library board contractor will help with that. The Friends gave a report, and then that's about it.
Any idea of what a contract would cost?
Sean, did we, I don't know, like, so we did approve a contractor. We did recognize that Tracy Philippi would probably be the best for that role. I don't know if we've talked about pay, but again, it's more about we're more interested in the programming, and I think Tracy could, you know, at some point we'll probably have Tracy come and give a presentation to the board, but right now we're just kind of really focused on the first 6 months of the year to drive as much programming as we can. Shameless plug, I'm going to do a grilling and barbecue presentation on a random Saturday in June, so shameless plug for that. But Tracy and I were kind of working on that the other day. So she's kind of putting together kind of a tentative plan right now until, like, I guess until everything's kind of formal at this point. But there's a lot of good ideas, and we've had a lot of conversations with the Friends, and we really appreciate the Friends' help here. And still trying to figure out, when does the library board kind of manage things, when do the Friends do things, and does that ever get kind of, is there a gray area between that? We're kind of still working through that. And again, that's where the contractor's going to be able to help.
Quick question. So in the budget, we had approved money for contractor, kind of. It was like a consultant, right?
Yep.
And then there was the programming. So which funds would come?
Yeah, so this would come out of the programming funds.
Okay.
This is more the actual contractor that roughly 8,500.
Yeah.
That was to help FGM. The library board, we're now kind of rethinking that. Like, FGM has kind of shown that they're kind of very committed to this, and we may not need those funds for the contractor. So we're kind of discussing from a budget perspective, what do we do with those funds? We all are kind of unified in that, like, you can't throw enough dollars at programming, but we also understand that the majority of that funding is coming from ARPA, right? So just need to be aware of that, if we go and ask for more money for programming and it comes from ARPA, that's a one-time thing. That's a 2023 thing. That's not a 24 or 25, right? Like, so we're being very cognizant of if we need more funds and ask for more funds, more than likely it would come from ARPA. It wouldn't come from the general fund.
Okay, and is that is an ARPA eligible expense if that were to be the choice?
I do not know off the top of my head.
Cameron and I kind of had a small conversation about it. We would need to dig into it, but I guess the short answer was maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the use of ARPA funds is relatively broad. Kind of what the board outlined as appropriate use for what the village wanted to do were kind of one-time, non-reoccurring expenses. So you kind of, yes, it probably could fit in ARPA, but no, does it really fit into like what the village wants to use those funds for? So if that's a direction that the board would want, there'd probably need to be some type of amendment, because that's not how the funds were initially allocated.
Sure. And we made it I made it very clear to the library board that if we were to use that 8,500 for programming, that's a one-time use only. That's not, can't go back to the well, you know, and we know, but we also understand that, you know, especially Cindy and I, having just gone through the budget process, like keeping an eye towards 2024, you know, and what does that look like for programming too?
And there's just one other thing. When the library board starts talking about using ARPA funds, there's another level of documentation that we're required. You know, from a hiring perspective, they would need to do some type of analysis on why they chose to pick said person and have that documented. So
Sure.
if we go that direction, let's just make sure we get all of our documentation there.
Yeah. And again, we thought Tracy was the best for this because one, Tracy lives in the area. She's president of the Friends. She worked for the Madison Foundation and helped Dane County Libraries, with grant writing and that sort of thing. So she seemed like the perfect candidate here. We did have lots and lots of conversation with the Friends around that. Did they feel comfortable with it? Were they okay with that? Ultimately, they were. I think this, from where we sit, where Cindy and I sit, we just feel like this is the best route forward to maximize the dollars in the programming. We definitely thought of a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. The dollars just didn't stretch as far, right? And so, but the dollar amount is the dollar amount, and so if Tracy can help us make that stretch, and then we add grant funding on top of that, all the better, right? Whereas if we were just going to try to piecemeal it together with other libraries, it was not going to stretch very far at all, and it really wasn't going to be a great product for our residents.
With the 8,500 designated for the work with the architects, does the board need to reconsider that if they're not going to use that funding for that, and we don't need that expert, which is fine. That's great. I mean, if GM can cover that from a library perspective, that's wonderful. Then I think the board needs to look at that 8,500 then and say, what should we do with it? Does it go to programming? Does it go to the consultant for programming? How do we, that approach?
Yeah, I think that's what Cameron, and I think that's David's understanding too, right?
Well, we just want to wait, because again, FGM, that was part of the direction of staff, is like, where are we at on the master planning?
Okay.
Right, because we, again, always trying to think of contingencies. What if it doesn't pan out with FGM? I'm pretty confident it should be okay for what we're looking for, but what if it just doesn't work out, right? That's still funding that is available that we could bring in library specialties to give us a hand. So I think before we go and do something with those funds or reallocate them, I think we just want to get that project kicked off and just see what we think from there.
Okay. Any other questions, David? All right, then joint fire. You're still talking, David.
Still talking. We met Thursday, December 22nd at Town Hall. Chief gave a report. You can find it in the packet. I won't belabor that. Then we talked about the current state of liability insurance for the fire district and the fire department. The meeting before that had come up as to how is the fire district and the fire department covered by from an insurance perspective. We had the folks, I did not grab their name and I apologize, but our insurance agents came to the call. Ultimately, Cottage Grove Fire Department, Inc. is the first name insured because they are the first point of contact, and then the fire district is also a named insured on the policy. Essentially, the fire district is any officer, so anybody that's on the committee is considered an officer for the fire district. There's actually an insurance package containing multiple policies. So, and I believe my notes are correct here. So management liability, umbrella, and auto policies are under that. And then we have several freestanding policies, whereas it's workers' comp is a separate contract, and then accident and sickness policy is also a freestanding policy. We had a long conversation around auto coverage. Ultimately, the municipalities are listed as owners and lessees of the equipment. If there's any loss, the check, ultimately, the claim that's made, the loss would be made out to the parties based on ownership. So Cottage Grove Fire Department, Inc., because they're the named insured, the fire district also because they're one of the named insured, and then municipalities depending on who owns the vehicle. With the kind of re-swizzled contract that we're working on, we are going to get to the point where any new vehicles purchased they'll be all co-owned by all the municipalities. But today, obviously, the tankers are owned by the town. So that, something to think about there. But that was an interesting conversation. Apparently, I geek out on insurance more than just about anybody. But I think it was helpful just to understand, because ultimately, the Fire Department, Inc. is looking to purchase a command vehicle from McFarland. And so that's why we needed to understand what the insurance is, and ultimately, we did approve purchasing a used vehicle from McFarland using Pleasant Springs funds to purchase the command vehicle. So we had a nice, long, lengthy conversation around that. Ultimately, the committee approved to purchase the vehicle using Pleasant Springs funds, and then Cottage Grove Fire Department, Inc. Would go back to their membership and look if it was roughly, I didn't grab the actual numbers, I can get them if you want me to, but I think it was roughly 25,000 for the 22 or 20, grasping at straws here. Yeah, less than 30,000 for the vehicle, and then it was roughly around 10,000 to wrap the vehicle. And Cottage Grove Fire Department, Inc. did agree, or we're going to go back to the membership, but they felt pretty confident that the membership would vote to approve paying for the new wrap. So there's that. And then we talked about the flooring replacement in the basement. They did get three quotes. We ultimately approved the least expensive quote there. And then we discussed the status of the new radios and grant application. Drum roll, we did not get the grant. Shocker there. So we did approve purchase of the radios. We did, Nick did talk to Cameron. There's no changes from our side or anything to approve. We'll just go ahead and purchase that. And then in terms of the consolidated joint fire agreement, Rick is waiting to hear back from their lawyer.
Yeah, we've been playing phone tag with the holidays. It messed with our schedule, so I'll be in touch with their attorney at some point in the near future to talk about the agreement.
The town attorney or?
Correct, the town attorney.
Thank you.
And that was about it. Did I, Chris or Sarah, did I miss anything?
Sound good?
Don't hold your breath.
Okay.
We'll see what the town's attorney has to say, but
I mean, we're only working from 10 different agreements currently right now that no one can follow, so be nice to have that done.
I mean, there's that agreement, and then we also have to look at the agreement between the district and the fire department, because there's some overlap there. So
Yep.
that was a nice little shocker a few months ago. So we're gonna work through that at some point, so.
I appreciate the committee members' efforts in working on that. Next, then, we have reports from village officers. I'm up first. We have a nomination for Megan Swanson for the library board. We've got a little bit of shifting around there. Megan is certainly an excellent person to step into the board based on her background and everything and her passion for the library. So her nomination's up. And then with Vince joining us and parting for other efforts to help hopefully municipalities at the state level, Vince has agreed to take on the following: Emergency Preparedness, Joint Fire, and NADVIG Review Committee there. So those are the nominations for consideration for the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the nominations as written.
All right, thank you, David. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris.
I
Any
just had a
further?
question.
Yes.
Sorry. So was there an opening on the library board then?
No, one of the library board members is being pulled back into the Friends of the Library, is my understanding.
Yeah, so Tracy's gonna become technically an employee of the village. It's technically a independent contractor, but because she
Okay.
would be a paid employee, it was just better to have her step down and then Megan step in as the Friends representative.
Okay, thanks.
I missed that in I knew I forgot something from the
We
report.
caught up to it, thank you.
Sorry about that, yeah. Good question.
So Hayes has a second. Oh, we already have one for Chris, sorry. Any other discussion? Taking away your thunder, man. Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Rick, anything else?
Just one quick thing. So I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. On January 1st, I became a partner at my firm. I just say that because it means my rate goes up, but Larry and I are going to still make sure we're providing the village with efficient legal services. So just wanted to make that quick note.
And I think from the board perspective, congratulations, well deserved.
Thanks.
And it's okay to toot your horn once in a while. All right. Finance Director.
Got a real exciting topic to talk about today. Gable put up on the screen, kind of as directed from the board as part of the budget. This was the second piece of the IT solution for this upcoming year. Larry, David, myself, JJ worked with Johnson Block, our IT provider, on December 20th, kind of went over 2 different options for the type of server that will be used in the upcoming replacement. We ultimately decided that the traditional or physical server for this time around makes the most sense, both from a cost perspective as well as an operational standpoint. Vincent, I know you got some IT background. Certainly welcoming any questions from the board members here on why we chose a certain option. There are details, as I mentioned in this email or in this memo, that have been specifically omitted from the memo, but more than happy to answer any questions.
Did I read right that you did not obtain a quote for a cloud service?
That's a loaded
That's
question.
I'm probably the only Microsoft Azure specialist that's in public service in anywhere in Wisconsin, let alone any other 50 state. You could call that a quote, but that was not a quote that they did receive. I had a lot of feedback for Larry, but I guess too long didn't read. Yes, they got a quote. No, it wasn't accurate, and we just don't have enough time to really analyze, an Azure-based deployment or AWS or GCP or any other cloud provider. What's currently in place today is just too old and too frail to try to do that work.
Is it sitting in a closet here? Is that?
Not in, well, it's over in the municipal services building. There is some stuff here, but it's our last provider there's a reason why they're our last provider. And now Cameron, who's also new, we're just trying to work through some of the sins of the past are coming back to haunt us. So again, if we had 6 more months, then we could sit down and do some good due diligence around that. But every day we wait, the more likely something fails.
And it's a 5-year depreciation.
Yeah, so, and we had a lot of discussion on, okay, well, what happens in year 3, 4, 5 if we come across a major repair? And talking about how that we would want to look at potentially the cloud-based option implementing a little bit earlier. A lot of our discussion kind of came around, okay, let's kind of come up with how do we prepare for this within the next 5 years? That we know that's where the world's going. How do we both train staff? How do our current applications work on a cloud-based, and kind of getting to the point where we feel comfortable making that switch. But yes, we are on a current 5-year schedule. Our current server is actually 6. And it's a wonderful piece of equipment.
So to that point, we've got a strategy going forward. Deal with what we've got right now. That's change management.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a big cost to go on the cloud-based route is amount of storage required. I mean, we currently have an abundance of things in our record that need to be purged. Kind of going forward, how are we saving things? What's the best way to save things for retention? Lisa has implemented, or we're working on implementing Laserfish. It's a cloud-based solution for document retention that has a lot of ability to kind of automate some of those items as well. So we're excited. This is 5 years is going to go by in a blink. So we're excited to be ready for that when it comes time to replacement.
Is Gordon Flesh doing your Laserfish implementation, or who's?
No, General Code or ICC. It's the same provider that does our ordinances. Sorry.
I have some experience in that product also. I know Gordon Flesh supports it.
we'll love any of your feedback. When we had a few trainings, we're on training number 2 for Laserfish, so certainly welcome the feedback there. For those of you who aren't in the IT space, when you don't have a traditional server, you rent space essentially monthly on a virtual server. I'll throw out the quote number that was given, even though it wasn't very good. It was about $826 a month. So you kind of go from a sunk cost, a 5-year, however long you want to amortize it, to a paying for a monthly fee. So one of the benefits of going to that option is you can scale up or down very quickly.
I think one thing to add too is that for the server replacement, a lot of it is for storage, right? So there's some things that we could do. Again, it's 5 years. I mean, in terms of 5 years, there's a lot of content that we need to deal with, and there's some things that we could do maybe in year 3, 4, or towards the end of 4, where we could start to talk about changing some behaviors or business process here. But ultimately, because of the age of the current deployment, there's not enough runway to change anything right now. So it was just kind of had to suck it up and just say, well, if we'd looked at this a year ago, we'd be in a different spot. But because we didn't, it is what it is.
How long will it take to implement the new server once we authorize you to buy it?
So currently, as part of the budget, there was access points and switches that are replaced. That's scheduled for February 15th. There's one part on the current quote that's on back order. The goal is to get this implemented. It would be no matter what after the switches, so it would be about 3/15. So we just have to, a key part of this is when we actually, there's some downtime, so we have to coordinate with the PD department, make sure there's alternatives to make sure that our community is safe. We're not having any issues.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of the traditional server option as described in quote 202212221. I'm not going to do the dash, everything else. Lisa's got it for the agenda, provided by Johnson Black.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. All right. Next, we have communication and miscellaneous business, starting with consideration of approval for the vouchers. Any questions regarding the vouchers as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Thank you, Heidi.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I didn't have any, but does anyone else? All right. Community events coming up. The Lions are having a pancake breakfast 28 at Clinton Hall, 8 to 11 a.m. I'm aware of that. There's others. Some events are probably in trouble because of snow today. Then we move up to future agenda items. Plan Commission. Certainly from that. Matt, anything else you're aware of at the top?
David brought forth an idea for, at least for research for as an agenda item, being the Department of Administration program that has for volunteer firefighters an award program that we're just going to do some research on and either have that ready for the next meeting or maybe the first meeting in February, but coming up.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
There's one more item, hate to be that guy. Because our taxes went down this past year, there are a high amount of refunds that will be issued. That's going to be on the next, in the next board packet. So don't be surprised when there's going to be 2 check runs. One's going to be tax refund or rebates for overpayments. So I think right now we're sitting slightly over 200.
Just, can you tell me, how does that happen? Don't you pay your bill once you know how much you owe?
Depending on what bank you are.
Oh.
So there's two trains of thought. Some banks, what they'll do is they'll do a best estimate of what your property taxes will be, and then they don't worry about calculating what the actual payment is, and they'll just send it to us. The second option is the bank will either work with Access Dane or work with us to get the information and then cut the check for the appropriate amount. And then you have the third option where they'll actually send the check to the property owners, and it's the property owner's responsibility to provide it to us. So a lot, because I think in general 2.7% is what it ended up going down overall, we're getting a lot more than expected. So it's a good problem to have.
All right, item 9.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Thank you, David. Is there a second? Second. Sarah? Non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.